Good morning, grade 8s. Welcome back to algebra. I'm just going to recap what we did at the end of the term. Right, first of all, we've got to know the language. So firstly, we start off with this, and that is called an equation. It is an equation because it has an equal sign. So if there is an equal sign in a number sentence, then it is an equation. This, however, is an expression because there is no equal sign. The next thing we have to look at is terms. And we're always going to circle our terms. Terms are separated by a plus or a minus. So remember, I always look for my plus or my minus in an equation, and that will split my terms up for me. Right, constants. A constant is something that can never change. So 3 is a constant, 13 is a constant because it never changes. The value of this would change depending on what value we assign to x. Now this you should know, exponents. The exponent there is 3 minus 5x cubed, so the exponent is the 3. And in this case here, the x is the variable. If I have a look at 5x cubed, we say that the negative 5, that is the coefficient. The coefficient is the number value in front of the variable. Those things you have to know. You've got to understand the terminology and you've got to be able to use it. So let's go and have a look and see how we use it. The first thing we're going to look at is how many terms are there. So what I do is I run my eye along the equation or the expression until I get to the first positive or negative, and that I will carry on from there until I get to the next one. Everything in front of that plus I circle, and then my last little value at the back. So I have 3 circles, so this has 3 terms. Let's look at the next one. I do in fact have a minus there, but if I have brackets, so brackets makes it 1 term. So that is 1 term. Right, let's have a look here. Again, I have my minus there, but the minus is inside my bracket. So that is 1 term. C is connected to that bracket by a multiplication sign. And remember, terms are separated by a plus or a minus. So this, in fact, is 1 term. Let's look at the last one on this page. I have got a positive there and a negative there. But this, your fraction line acts as a bracket. And that fraction line is saying that term divided by that term, the operation, so we've got one bracket divided by another bracket. There is no plus or minus, so this in fact is 1 term as well. Let's go and have a look. Now we're talking about coefficients. I like to call this the Topix Rule. So we are looking for the coefficient of b. So in algebra, the first thing we always do is circle our terms. Well, there's no plus, there's no minus, so this is 1 term. Once I've got my 1 term, I go and look for my b, and then I take my Topix, and I'm going to Topix out the b, and what am I left with? Well, I'm left with, so the coefficient of b is going to be 2ac. So whatever is left after you've Topixed it out. Right, let's look at the following one. First thing I always do is circle my terms. There's my first negative, so everything in front of it is a term. There's my next operation sign. Everything in front of that is one term. And then I've got plus 3 at the end. What term am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for my b term. So in actual fact, you are only going to look at this term. B squared is not the same as b, so I ignore that. There is my b term. I get my Topix out. I'm going to use the Topix rule, Topix that out, and the answer to this, the coefficient of that term is -2. Please remember that the sign is also included. Right, let's look at number 3. Write down the expression in question 1 above that has a constant term. Constant means it can never change. So the only thing that can be a constant is a number. But remember, the first thing we do, there's my negative, so that is one term. This is my second term. This is my third term. Rule number 1 in algebra, circle your terms. That's got variables in it, that's got variables in it, so my constant term is 5. When it's a positive, I don't include the sign. Right, I want you to go and pause your video, and then I want you to check and see if you do understand the test you're understanding. So take a few minutes, pause your video, and then I'm going to do the solutions after that for you. Right, hopefully you've come back with all the correct answers, so let's have a look what's going on here. So it says, state the number of terms. Keyword, the number of terms. So what separates terms? A plus or a minus. I have a look here. I've got a negative, but that's in a bracket, and even so, my division line makes it one term. So this is one term. It is divided by another term, so I don't have any pluses or minuses, so this is one term. Let's look at B. I go and look for my operators, positive or negative. Here I find my first operation, positive or negative. Let's glance through it. A half divided by 3/4 of, so that's division of is the same as multiply. So all of this is one term, that is another term. So this expression has two terms. Let's look at this. We are looking for the coefficient of b, not b squared or b cubed or the cube root of b. So we go, remember, this is our Topix rule, only one term. The coefficient of b in this instance, remember there's always an invisible 1 there. It's also to the power of invisible 1. So the coefficient of b is 1. I have 1b. Let's look at b. Here I'm going to look, it's -2b. There is my plus sign. So that is one term. That is the second term. I'm looking for the b term. I take my Topix. And what am I left with? I'm left with -2. Not just 2. I look at my next one. This is one term. I take my Topix. And I'm going to cross out b. What am I left with? So everything that's left is the coefficient of b. So the coefficient of b over here is 2/3 a. Let's look at the last one. I'm looking for my b. I go and circle my terms. I don't even look at that because it's got no b's in. So I look at this, and remember there's an invisible 1, invisible power 1 there. I take out my Topix out the b, and what am I left with? Do you see why we need to have a 1 there? So the coefficient of that term was negative 1. That's all for today, grade 8. So please will you make sure that you do your homework. The homework for this exercise is page 73, exercise 6.1. Thank you.